Today we want to continue with the aspect of the social integration of migrants. And we are saying that the integration socially of migrants is a very crucial aspect of migration policies in developed nations. If we are to cite examples of these migrant policies, if you looked at developed countries such as the US, there are certain policies that they have for you to be integrated socially into their populations. And most times they consider certain characteristics such as the education levels, but also the risk at which this migrant is. For example, political migrants, people who are highly on demand, uh, probably due to their political affiliations, could be offered more favorable policies. All the policies in those developed nations would favor them in a way that they would be offering them protection from their opponents who are pursuing them because of the political differences. But also, there are policies regarding the kind of social life that a migrant would live, especially in the developed nations. So you would realize that probably there are certain positions, policies that set where there are certain positions that migrants cannot be able to hold. But we've seen over time the US and the UK as well relaxing some of their migrant policies and allowing representation of migrants even up to their highest parliamentary councils. So that is how relevant looking at the integration of migrants socially is. But at our level, as a developing nation, what is very important for us is to understand first the issue of the cross-cutting social values, but also the social behaviors among the migrants. So, say for example, you have migrants coming from Ethiopia coming into Sudan. You have migrants coming from probably Eritrea that come into Sudan. Therefore, you must be able to. The country must be able to have. The country should be able to have policies that actually allow or that govern the social integration of these migrants. And in trying to have an effective social integration, it is important that we look at the aspects of language proficiency in order to facilitate communication. You need to acquire the language of the host country. Therefore, we have seen, especially in Uganda, we have seen due to the influx of the migrants coming from the war-torn Sudan and the DRC, but also partly Tanzania, we have seen people come into Uganda, and for example, for the Tanzanians and the Congolese that mostly speak French and Swahili, we see them readjusting to start to speak English. So you need to acquire the language of the host country. That is one of the processes of inclusion and social integration. But there's also a need to understand and appreciate the values, the customs, and the beliefs of the host community, as well as build a relationship with the locals. So you need to establish a mechanism through which the local people and the migrants can coexist. But also you need to obtain legal status. And that is why for all those that are in the refugee camp, they are given legal status. and most times you realize they have ID numbers, and so as part of your social integration, you have to understand the legal status and also the citizenship. Then there is the aspect of the community engagement, access to healthcare, overcoming discrimination, and so forth, which you just understand as a way of the social interaction that occurs within the host community where you have migrated. So, like we're saying here, that it mainly involves migrants being accepted into the host society, but also it mainly looks at how the migrants wish to accept the different issues they have found in the host community. So they should be able to understand some of the issues at that particular level. And therefore, there are mainly two approaches into integration, into this particular social integration. And one is the aspect of multiculturalism, where we are saying it allows migrants to retain their culture while adapting to the host culture. But also, we are saying through assimilation as well. So, in multiculturalism, we are looking at migrants having their own culture and then retaining it and not adopting uh, immediately to the host culture, but later they can adapt. They are not adopting, but they are adapting to the host's culture. But there's also what we are referring to as assimilation, which aims to completely absorb the minority migrant culture into the host culture. Assimilation is just similar to the French assimilation policy, where in East Africa and mainly in the Congo, they wanted Congolese to behave like the French, eat French food, speak the French language, dress like the Frenchmen, behave like the Frenchmen. So this is mainly what the assimilation is. And if, for example, if you migrated to Uganda and the approach you're using for integration is assimilation, it will mean you need to speak the Ugandan language, you need to dress like the Ugandans, you need to eat the food that the Ugandans eat. So you adopt mainly all the other cultural aspects, values, and issues related to the Ugandan people. And that is what we refer to as assimilation. And then, what are some of the importances of these integration policies? The advantage is that if these integration policies are very successfully implemented, they actually reduce social and economic disparities between migrants and the natives. But also, it increases migrant contribution to both the origin and the destination country. And this is stated in the International Migration Booklet of 2021. So, just a moment.
Like
we had said earlier on.
Can Loquia mute?
Someone kindly mute your microphone. So here, like we had said yesterday, as a result of the remittances, the contributions can be both way. For example, if a migrant is employed in the host country, they will contribute to the host country. If a migrant is employed in the host country, they will contribute to the migrant country. So and then they are offering services to the host community. But in other ways, they are able to remit taxes, or they are able to remit taxes to the host community, but also they are able to remit monies to where they are coming from, and therefore we will see development occurring in both the origin and the destination country. But also, this successful integration uh, is inclusive, leads to inclusive and sustainable economic growth, because we're looking at the fact that we're having now this is subjective. This particular aspect here is subjective to the type of migration group that you're getting. If you're getting a migration group that adds value to your economy, then it means that there is going to be an economic boost. One, because you have available market, but also you have skilled labor at your disposal, but also you have a very productive population that is from the migrant community. And therefore, the combination of all these group of people gives you an advantage to be able to have an economic spur in your economy. And the key elements for effective integration policies include one, language training and information campaigns, that there is need for you to be able to have the migrants understand the host language, and that is through trainings and information campaigns. But also there is legal provision against discrimination, and therefore this can help in mitigating
Loquia, kindly please mute.
in sorry for that. So, in other words, what we're saying is that we need to have these legal provisions against discrimination, so that both the host community and the migrants are able to maintain a certain level of unity, but also it may reduce aspects of conflicts. And we have these legal provisions against discrimination, such as discrimination for jobs, discrimination for education services, health services, access to transport services, and so forth and so on. And these legal documents actually exist in majority of the countries. Then we have the pre-arrival support. For example, those who have visited any refugee reception centers, but also for migrants, for those who are using official boundaries. At every official boundary, there is always a pre-arrival support, and where you undergo legal registration, and then you're legally helped to settle in your new country of destination. But also, for us to have this effective integration, there is need for educational opportunities, and this one is happening in very many countries, where we have seen migrants being given special attention to help them attend education, either within that particular country or abroad even. And these education opportunities most times are offered in as a scholarship, as a sponsorship to that effect. Then we have the recognition of foreign qualifications, and we're saying effective communication strategies help help in combating the issue of disunity, especially between the host community, but also the migrants themselves. So you need to offer very clear information to the migrants themselves so that they are able to understand, one, the policies the country has, but also the other factors, especially the social factors of the particular country, so that it is easier for them to integrate. But also, when we're referring to recognition of foreign qualifications, we mean that the we mean that the country, the country of destination, for example, is able to rate that they are the country where these people are coming from have a certain education system, and therefore they will be able to recognize these same qualifications in their country as an equivalent, and therefore this helps them integrate, especially in the job sector, but also in the employment sector, so that these people can be able to get opportunities in the employment sector as well. Then we have the partnerships with civil society organizations. We understand that government is not able to wholesomely handle the issues of integration, and therefore it is very important that civil organizations are brought in, because they have, one, they have the specialists who are well trained regarding issues of humanitarianism, but also the issues of integration. And therefore, what matters mostly is that if you brought these civil society organizations, they can be able to help you because of their speciality and the availability of skilled labor. They can be able to help you to smoothen this process of integration. So we want to look at migration vis-a-vis development, or the relationship between migration and development. So first, we need to recognize the link. What is the link in here? The international community acknowledges the important connection between the migration and development. The 2030 agenda of the SDG reflects a significant step forward by integrating migration and migrants. What happens is that we, in our earlier discussions, when we were referring to urbanization, slightly we were able to discuss the issues of development, and we agreed that as a result of this rural and urban migration, or as people migrate to the urban sector, you realize that there is a population growth, and that population spur or sprawl that occurs in the urban setting leads to an urban sprawl, where urban places start to sprawl, but also they start to develop. And that is why we are recognizing the impact of migration on development. And the positive economic impacts are that the remittances as a result of migration to developed countries contribute significantly to the economy. That when you even migrate to another country, as you remit taxes, as you whether they're direct or indirect taxes, you're contributing significantly to the tax base of that particular country, and therefore it will contribute to the economic development of that country. But also the migrants, or that migration that occurs either between countries or within a particular country from one place to another, helps to boost access to markets in receiving countries for sending countries. So when you have a country that is receiving migrants, then there are higher chances that your market size is increasing, and therefore this is a boost for markets. But also the returning skilled migrants can enhance the flow of finance and the knowledge to their origin country. So sometimes people migrate, but later they go back to their home countries. And therefore, when they are able to attain or achieve a lot of knowledge within the country where they migrated or the country of destination, at the time they go back to their origin or to their original country, you'll realize because of the expertise they have generated or they have got from this particular country, they can be able to boost the finance and the knowledge in their countries of origin. But also, this does not come away with negatives. And in the negatives, we're looking at the issues of brain drain, that immigration of skilled professionals can hinder development in sending countries. And in the year 2016, Uganda started to experience this brain drain issue because of the salary that they were paying to the doctors in the country. Majority of the country doctors started moving abroad to the European countries, to Cuba, and so forth, because they were being paid better in those particular countries. So that means the services, the healthcare services in Uganda were becoming lesser because the skilled professionals are moving away or they are emigrating away from their host nation to other countries to offer these professional services. But also, those are the economic impacts. Now, we want to look at the social impacts as well. And in the positive aspect, we're saying that migration positively fosters diversity and innovation in the cities. And we have seen cities having exhibitions, especially in Dubai. You will be able to see exhibitions for different nations or for people of different cultures. There is always a multicultural show that occurs in Dubai. Other countries have taken the issues of diversity as a means of tourism, but also they have taken it as an issue of innovation, both in the food sector, but also in other aspects. And what happens necessarily is that you realize, for example, because of the diversity, if you had only the same people in a particular country where pizza is their staple food, if you only produce pizza, then you allow the immigrants to come, then you will start to produce another type of food. And that kind of innovation and diversity helps to improve the social aspects, but also they contribute a lot to your community. Then the negative aspect of this migration is that there are a lot of issues that come with xenophobia and discrimination against migrants and lead to social tension and violence. We were able to see this happen in South Africa the last 2 years, where the locals became very they started attacking Africans, who, especially the Nigerians. So xenophobia alone is an attack that is directed at a specific group of people. However, sometimes they are at a very individual level, but regardless, they create a very negative social impact, and sometimes we've seen violences result from this. We've seen fights within the refugee settlements between the host communities and the refugees as a result of this kind of discrimination. And most times it creates a lot of social tension within those communities. So the migration agenda of 2030, we just want to look at its scope and some of the issues that it covers. And the agenda includes migration-related targets that mainly address retaining health workers in developing countries. Therefore, the Migration Agenda 2030 is that, in other words, they don't intend the health workers to move. And like I was giving you an example of the migration that, the health worker migration in Uganda. Therefore, the Agenda 2030 aims to retain these health workers at the developing world. And some of the policies that are being some of the policies that have been drawn here, policies such as also there are other different policies that are being developed to achieve the same. And all these particular targets that are towards achieving the Migration Agenda 2030, they are policies that are being developed both nationally and also internationally. And secondly is the scholarships for international studies, which you're seeing occur especially for the health workers, scientists, but also those historians, where we need to understand certain patterns. And all over the social media platforms, you'll be able to see this scholarship international for international studies happening. But also the agenda looks at ending human trafficking, that is a violation of the human rights. And it also looks at protecting the labor rights of migrants, especially women and children, but also reducing remittance transfer costs. And we've seen this with the developed world. You'll realize they have Western Union, they have PayPal, there are different transaction platforms that have been created, especially for you to ease transfer of money from the developed world by these migrants. So what happens is that the Agenda 2030 wants to look at the reduction of these particular transfer costs. So you'll be able to realize that someone in the UK is able to transfer money to a developing world at a cheaper cost. Whereas before this particular Agenda 2030, the costs of transfer were quite a little higher compared to what currently is there. But also, the 2030 agenda looks at providing legal identity for all. And that is why earlier on I was explaining to you that at the reception center of majority of these countries, you'll be able to realize that people are offered legal identity with their identity numbers, but also they are offered some documents that legally qualify them to stay in that particular country. But also majority of the migrants are required to have visas and work permits. And we very much understand the aspect of women relating to migration, because even if it is the man or the head of the family is a man and he migrated to another place, the woman also has an impact to feel. Similarly, the movement of women from a particular place to another also has a very huge impact. And therefore, in issues of gender, we would want to understand migration and women. Therefore, we are saying that gender is a very crucial aspect of migration discussed due to its significant impact on development. The number of female migrants is rising globally, making women a very key demographic in migration. And we are specifically interested in looking at the gender norms because gender norms shape expectations and opportunities for migration. And we're saying that migration can empower women, one, by increasing autonomy and self-esteem, by enhancing human capital, by strengthening authority, worth within families and communities, contributing to more equitable social norms and improved access to resources. But you are able to realize that the mere fact of migration being a tool for empowerment of women rhymes in the fact that if the rhymes in the fact or in the possibility that this woman who is migrating and is able to get better opportunities. Because and then if the person migrates, if this woman migrates to another place and does not get the opportunities, then it is going to have a negative impact, and the negative impacts will be issues of reduced self-esteem. We shall have lesser human capital development, and therefore it will have a very negative aspect. But for you as a demographer, you should be able to look at, if you're looking at gender and migration, we want to look at the impact of the impact of migration specifically on women. And the aspects that we should be looking at for you as a demographer, the aspects you should be looking at are the social aspects as well. Then you can come and look at the economic aspects as well. So if you wanted to look at the impact of migration on women, you would want to understand how it affects them socially. And if you wanted, oh my God. Okay. Are you still able to see me? I see Samuel has gone off. Are we proceeding well?
Yeah. Able to see.
Okay, I think unfortunately Samuel has gone off. His power might have gotten done. Probably we shall record with him later on. Okay, sorry for that. But like I was saying, that the interest for you should be the impact on women socially and economically, and probably when you're looking at the impact, you should be looking at probably how it can be affecting women in terms of access to education, protection from GBV, access to health care, but also mental health. You should be looking at issues of autonomy and independence. So decision making as well. So we need to look at those particular issues. For example, if for migrant women, when they migrate to another country, what happens to their autonomy and their independence? What happens to gender-based violences? It might be issues of cultural exchange and diversity. So what are the new perspectives? What are the new cultural practices? Are there healthy cultural practices? So those are the aspects that I implore you to look at in terms of that particular aspect. So the feminization of migration is that women now constitute a very significant portion of international migrants. And many women migrants, workers are employed in domestic work, caregiving. These sectors often lack legal protection, leading to exploitation and abuse. So what happens is that we have seen, especially in the Arab world, a lot of migrants from developing world going there, especially Saudi Arabia, Oman, Yemen. We've seen specifically in Uganda, we've seen labor organizations come up and take a lot of young women to those countries as migrant workers, and most of them are employed into domestic work, as caregivers and so forth. So we are looking at that particular aspect, and you're able to see that actually these particular sectors do not have a legal protection. And specifically, if you looked at countries such as Oman, you will realize that probably they even have laws that allow them to enslave someone. And therefore, if you're sending as a country, if you're sending labor force and women specifically to countries that allow slavery or allow to enslave someone, then the chances that there is a lot of exploitation occurring to those particular women is actually a very huge aspect. But in terms of feminization, we are looking at this particular domestic work and caregiving specifically being given to women as migrants. And therefore, you realize that majority of the women, when they fail to achieve in terms of economic gains in their country, they prefer those countries there and do domestic chores and caregiving. But like I've said earlier, there's a lot of exploitation and abuse. You can go and read the report by the International Labour Organization in 2010, and you will be able to understand some of the very, very strange stories that are happening. So your interest as a demographer should be in the patterns of the movement of women. So earlier on in the developed, in the earliest days, you would find that it is actually young men and men that migrate a lot. Why? Because socially they are seen as the providers of the families. They fed for the homes. They are meant to be the hard workers and so forth. But as a result of the empowerment of women, we have started to see the trend of migration change, having more female moving and migrating to different countries. And therefore, that is the impact you should be able to look at. And you should also be able to understand the trend. Why is the trend occurring as it is? Why is the trend as it is occurring? So those are some of the issues we can be able to look at. Then migration offers opportunities to women, new opportunities, but also financial independence, improved status. These are all issues that we've continuously discussed. But also the disadvantages we have discussed as well. Abuse and exploitation, gender-based. So what happens is that these particular citations, such as OSHI 2002, then the UN, and these are reports. You can actually go and look at these citations and be able to read the writings of these people, specifically on what they are talking about. So factors that affect women's migration: we have unequal expectations. Women may have unrealistic expectations or lack proper information. That is by Kawar 2016. So you can be able to go and read that report by Kawar, and you will be able to understand what his study was all about and why he has that kind of conclusion. Then gender roles, traditional family roles, and lack of socio-economic independence can hinder migration, but also restrictive migration policies can limit opportunities for migrating. For example, dependence on spouse residence permit can help reduce the migration. So these are some of the issues we are looking at regarding why women are not women may not be migrating as frequent as possible, because some laws, some countries do not allow women to migrate as much as, especially the Arabian countries, do not allow women to migrate as much as possible if their spouses, especially if they are married and their spouses residing within. So the policy of the country may not allow a woman to migrate and leave the spouse within. But also, we have seen countries that are offering visas, family visas, for different individuals. For example, when your spouse is in the UK, you can invite your wife on a family visa, and they are able to come and stay with you. So those are some of the issues that are there. Then the vulnerabilities that are related to women migrants. We have the unstable jobs, the limited social security, the work-life balance, poverty and inequality. So, for example, managing household responsibilities and work. For example, you have to take care of your child, but also you have to be at workplace. All those responsibilities make women more vulnerable as migrants. But also, they have low wages, they don't have benefits, and the working conditions are mostly poor, especially for the domestic workers. But also, social security, such as accessing healthcare and housing due to informal employment, is likely to happen. Then we have issues of poverty and inequality due to limited access to information and resources, and cultural barriers. So I think since Samuel is off, and our time is fast spent, I would wish to end there for now. I think our minutes are actually done. Yes, Thomas. Thomas, your hand is
Yes.
up.
Yeah. Thank you. I just want you to maybe give me a bit of differentiation between the migrants and the refugee, and mostly maybe the policy framework which is specific to refugee.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. So, a migrant these are all the a refugee is just a subset of a migrant. These are all people who are moving away from their specific countries. But for you to attain a refugee status, it is as a result of a forced displacement. Like currently, as a result of the displacement, I mean the forced or the insecurity that is happening in Sudan, we're having refugees in Uganda, and they are getting that refugee status because of the forceful displacement that occurs. But they are actually migrants as well. They are migrants, but for them, they are referred to as refugees because of the displacement effect. For example, like we looked at forced migrations as well yesterday when we were doing classification of migrations. So for them, they are referred to as refugees because of the forced, because in other words, we can refer to them as forced migrants as well, living in another country because of political instability in another country, or because of economic and the other factors that we discussed. And we can have varied international migrants. So someone might migrate from their country and come and stay probably as a worker. He might want to come and work in another country. That one we can call him a worker migrant. So a migrant is just someone who leaves their country to move to another country for whatever reason that is there. I hope that is clear. Then on the issue that you're raising regarding the policy framework, now what happens is that frameworks the policy frameworks are developed by refugee agencies such as the United Nations, UNHCR, United Nations High Commission for Refugees, but also they do this development of policy within the context of the country that is hosting these refugees. And what happens is that where specifically in migration, we are looking at the aspect of the social integration of these refugees into their host community or into the country they have come to. And therefore, we need to, when we're referring to the policy frameworks, we want to look at that tool that helps to facilitate the integration of these refugees into that particular country. So in the framework will describe issues of access to education, issues of access to healthcare, issues of the language, the issues of access to land, and so forth. So it would give the entire framework would give how a country aims to integrate refugees as part of their social values and so forth. And that is why we are looking at multicultural vis-a-vis assimilation. And majority of the policy that Uganda is using is actually multicultural, where the refugees are able to practice their culture and also the host community is able to practice their culture. But as well, both societies should be able to adapt to each other's culture. I hope I have answered what Thomas was seeking clarity on. Yes, Ali, your hand is up. You could as well raise your issue.
Yes, thank you so much for the lecture. Mine is not actually a question. It's just a reminder to my colleagues, those who are joining the lecture with their mic open and also putting videos on. Let's try to consider that sometimes the network is not all that stable, and most of us are using like MBs, which is sometimes also disturbing. So with the videos and also mic being on, so it really disturbs a lot. Your colleague is not getting well the content of the lecture. So next time, let's try to consider that. Thank you so much.
I hope that is noted by colleagues, and that is a good insight. But as well, I've received I've received the assessment from, I think, one person. So I'm requesting that we all submit the assignment as quick as possible. I am using the assignment to assess our level of grasp of this particular unit. So kindly submit your assignments to my email that I shared yesterday. But like I said, if you were